Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a double feature, 2 top 16 breakdowns for 2 different One Piece events that happened around the world this past weekend. So we do have TAX Oceania regionals that happened in person in Brisbane this last weekend, as well as the Core TCG May Treasure Cup that happened online as well. So one, if you guys want any of these deck lists or anything, they're both linked in the description of this video on Eggman events, and also both of them were streamed. So we have the double sleeve was doing the one for tax, so we have day 1 and day 2 linked here on Twitch, as well as we had Nico and Human streaming it on my channel this past weekend since I was out of town. So that is on my Twitch as well, so linked right there, and it will be re-uploaded to my YouTube by the end of the week too for you guys for that one. But again, we just have a lot to talk about, a lot of deck lists for this one, and we're just going to kind of go back and forth between the 2 events based on the top placing list and leader kind of thing. But honestly, we do get a couple surprises. First one for both of them, really, no blue cards top this weekend, which is really interesting since we have been seeing, I think Don Quixote do Flamingo has been doing pretty well the last couple weeks leading up to this, as well as Emporio kind of getting the occasional, but none of them getting into the top 16 of either of these events is really interesting. We did have in Oceania just, you know, the casual red taking up 2/3 of the meta, and at least the pure red with Zoro, Newgate, and Luffy kind of getting it there. And then also if you look over on the North American side, we do see a bunch of Trafalgar Law getting this. We had 5 Trafalgar Laws in the top 16, which is probably like the most I've seen Trafalgar Law top, at least since set 1. And even set 1, I don't think it ever got like more than like 5 in one event in a top 16. So that's really interesting to see. And then we did have kind of like a lot of the one-ups, right? Green's just been okay. We have, you know, Kinemon and Kid doing all right. We had Smoker top in both of these events as well. And then also a Kaido here in Oceania. So you guys want to see the deck list, we're going to jump on into it, starting off with our first place list for the TAC event. This is Jiawei ties Eustace Kid leader, and if you guys have known me, I've been kind of grinding Kid out a little bit more than Kinemon. I think it's just a meta. I mean, we're kind of past the halfway mark in this meta for a little bit. We do have a couple events this month and next month, but it's kind of understood what a lot of these decks look like right now. And I think for green, I think Kid just kind of has a little bit of a better matchup spread. I will say, like Kinemon, if you're able to play your Odin on curve, it can win a lot of matchups just from the pressure from that, but by and large, on just kind of the utility of this deck, it's just very, very strong. I still believe in the 8-drop. I think the 8-drop is very, very good for what it is. Still being able to, there's a lot of decks that don't really have answers to this, and I think red traditionally has a lot of issues since all of them are running like Jet Pistol as much, so that's something to consider there. Trafalgar Law gets a lot of free value. 4 copies of Punk Gibson, which is quite a lot. That's a lot of copies of Punk Gibson. It's a very good card for aggressive decks, because sometimes it can go for like a 2-for-1, which is nice, and are open up like the win on the next side. If they have like a blocker setup, you can kind of Punk Gibson that away and get a lot of pressure for it. So I like Kid. I think it's the better of the 2 leaders right now. That's my opinion. You guys can disagree with it. We'll talk about Kinemon when we get to it later, but again, still a really, really good list, good leader. It was the best deck, I would say, at least the most popular deck last format. So I really was surprised how so many people went away from this leader and then to play Kinemon, and then they're kind of slowly coming back. I've been talking about this for a little bit, but we'll have to see if Kid continues to do well. But winning an event is definitely a really good thing, especially a 200-player event with a top cut afterwards. Very, very strong song. So congrats to Jiawei for their finish there. Going into the core first place. So this is John Nguyen's starter deck, Luffy. And I don't know. I've been enjoying both these. Luffy, I definitely was the starter deck, like BT1 or set 1 for this game was my favorite leader. I'd say set 2, I wasn't as confident in it. I think we just kind of moved away from some of its strengths, but being able to take first place in a 512-person event is pretty good, going 9-0. So this is John Nguyen's version of the list here. And I also do want to mention that the TAC Luffy also got second place, and the list is right here, and it is literally 49 out of 50. Noel's list just ran 1 copy of Radical Beam and 3 copies of Luffy. That is the only difference for that. So I guess this is the build of Luffy if you want to be able to do good with it. We do have some new set 2 cards, including like Curly Dedan, which is just such a good card in any red deck. It's being able to draw a 1-drop is fantastic when all your 1-drops are really good. We also have Mass Deuce over here, which I think is fine. Like normally I would say, like I was like on Beppo for a long time in set 1, and this is kind of like Beppo in the same way. You do have to put 2 Dawn, and it's only 2k power or less, but there's honestly not as many like 3k stuff that you have to like. The difference between 2k power less and 3k power less isn't very strong in this meta right now, especially since a lot of blockers are 2k or less anyways, unless you're playing against purple, which purple's not really seeing as much play. So I like the idea of this one, and I think it's probably just better than Beppo right now. Anyways, Nico Robin and Vista, like just a lot of early removal, so you're really great against like Zoro, I would imagine, with that. And the fact that you are able to be like a 6k leader at all times, just the fact that you can use your leader effect to put Dawn underneath itself if needed to, means you can always pressure Newgate, which is strong as well. But like this deck, I don't know how I feel about it in set 2 still. I maybe have to try this build myself and see how I feel about it. But red's a good color. Red's doing very, very well. So I don't think there's any surprise there. So congrats to both John for their first place in core, and also again to Noel for their second place in Oceania for this one. So next up, we're going to go just through all Newgate. So we, there's 3 different copies of Newgate for this one. We do have first our second place for core. This is Matthew Chapman's Moby Dick version of it, and it was really interesting to see like everyone was on Straw Hat for pretty much most of April, but then towards the end of the month, people have kind of been going back to Moby Dick and just kind of finding the power of this one. A couple of interesting card choices for this one too. We do have Blenheim as well, so a blocker in this deck can get a lot of value, and it's a 3k, which is kind of impactful, kind of in the scenario I was talking about earlier with Mass Deuce. We also do have the Raikuyo, which is just Dawn times 1 for your turn. All your characters with the white beard pirates and their types get plus 1k power, which would include itself, and so it's just like another 2 copies of Moby Dick, and or it can stack on top of Moby Dick, which is fantastic. It just means that I don't know, like this pretty much is always a 5k, and being able to just put a lot more pressure on your opponent is the thing. Normally the issue isn't how much pressure you can put on your opponent, but more of the how many attacks you're able to get in with the deck. But I think that's good. Also, no 9-drop, which I think most of the versions of Moby Dick just have decided, that card just stuck in my hand for too much of the game. The effect that it gets isn't really worth it most of the time, and it's not super needed. So this is Matthew's copy of the list, and then we also have from the tax side, this is Elliot Charter's Straw Hat version of us, and this is pretty much what I've seen. I've probably inputted pretty close, if not exactly, this deck list like a dozen times already. I think this is just a tried and true build for it. I think a lot of people kind of expect and know what this deck can do and have experience around it, so that does mean that you do have to be this is probably, I'd still say, like the most popular build in the game right now, at least for set 2. So people knowing how the deck works and what it does mean you are at kind of a disadvantage, that you don't have as much spice, or that you do kind of have to play pretty perfectly more of the time. But I think this deck is still great. Very, very good. Also 4 Ace and 2 Luffy. Normally it's the other way around, but this Ace can get a lot of value too. So I can see why that is the case there. So that is Elliot's list. And also I did want to go over Johan's list here, which is the hybrid version. I haven't really seen a build like this before, and it was just unique enough. I wanted to just kind of do a quick mention for it. So this has Moby Dick, but it also has like a lot of like the Straw Hat low end, and just has a lot of variety and a lot of interesting 1s and 2s and 3s. Like Bartholomew, it is a being able to use it as like a blocker as well, but also plus the 1k is nice, and it's a really interesting build with ratios. So I just want to mention it real quick and see that you guys saw it as well. Congrats to Johan for their finish there. But we are now out of the Newgate block of this video, and next we're going to move on to Trafalgar Law. So this specifically is Dylan Chu's version of Trafalgar Law, who got 3rd at the core TCG event. And I do also want to mention, like, especially Law is such a configurable deck type where you can make it however you want. You get a lot of choices and flexibility for your ratios that there are just a lot. There again, 5 got top 16 in the core event, including Michael Lee, who did win the Payor event a couple weeks ago. So make sure to check out all those, and I think they're definitely worth your time checking out these lists. But going on into this one specifically, Dylan's one is pretty interesting, and he also did a video for it too. So I'll link it to in this video, or I'll link it on the website. So if you click his name, you can get to it. But really, really interesting list. And I 100%, I thought this was wrong when I saw this deck list. Like, oh, they put the wrong Nami into this build, but that is actually the correct one. They are not running the one drop Nami to search top 5 for Straw Hat characters. There's no event cards in this build either. It's just very interesting in a lot of ways, and including also the running of Dagora in the sense that you're able to rest this character, play up to 1 red character with a cost of 1 from your hand, which means Nami's, Choppers, Makinos, Utamas, being able to use that effect to kind of clear, get your board with 5 1 cheaper, is really huge for what it is too. So I think that makes a lot of sense for what you're able to do with it. Again, for Zoros being able to be aggressive, and both the laws are just very great in that sense too. So if you guys want more on this deck specifically, again, make sure to watch Dylan's video that he made, and I think it's a very strong showing for it. And it's going to be really, this is an interesting build of it, and I'm curious to see how it does in the next couple weeks too. So congratulations to Dylan for their finish there. Then we have our Zoro list here, and both this specifically is Choi's Zoro list. Also, Jonathan Maurer got top 4 with theirs as well. So I include both because they're like the same placing. But we did have for Roy's version of it. I don't know. Like this is understood for a lot of what these look like right now. We do have Magra. I really do like Magra. I see a lot of people not run Magra, and I feel like that's just wrong. I feel like this is an important card for what the deck wants to do. And since it's a 1-drop itself, it's not really. You just never really find a reason why this is like a rough card. You just get a lot of early game pressure with it, and then you're able to use it to increase the amount of swings you can do with the Zoro effect and everything else. So I do like the add of that, and I don't know. We've seen a lot of kind of Zoro with red good stuff is very strong. It's been doing very well, and I don't think that's very different for that. So this is Roy's list, and going to Jonathan's real quick too. A little bit of I'd say this one's a little bit more wild in a sense of some of the inclusions, including the Tony Choppers. Not a lot of Zoro lists are running the blockers there. Also running both copies of Nami. So this one, essentially turning your leader, or having like the Star Deck Luffy leader effect as well, is another 1-drop, which means that you can find it from Magra, or you can boost it with Magra, as well as like Curly Dedan can find it, which is nice. Nami can't find itself, so that is one thing to consider too. And then just pretty much the same kind of top end that we saw on the other side. Newgate being a very good card, and can help you not only offensively, but also not get lose on a crackback if you're being really aggressive with it. So this is Jonathan's list, and congrats to both of our players there. And then we're in our final 3. So this is Jonas's top 5, or sorry, 5th place Smoker from the core TCG event. And also just big shout outs to AZ, where I'm from. I'm in this local scene. They really showed up for the core TCG event this week, and they got a lot of tops, and they did a really, really good job. So with Jonas's Smoker list here, Smoker's been in a really interesting position in the sense that I've said this probably 100 times by now, that Smoker and in general Black can find the pieces for most scenarios, and it's mostly just the sequencing of when you find them and if you're able to use them. And specifically this list, there are a lot of interesting choices that I normally don't see, including 2 of the GARP. That's kind of a decision point if you want to use that, but also 5 copies of the starter deck Smoker, which is insane. I usually see like 2 copies of it. But this does kind of make a little bit of sense in the sense that you are able to be very kind of counter aggressive with this deck too. And I think that this is something that if you're playing against something like Red Zoro, they're always going to have a 1-drop that you're able to turn to 0, and then this gets to be like an 8k double attack a lot of the time, which is kind of hard to get out of. And if you're able to pressure your opponent with like 2 swings of this, you're kind of back into the game a lot of the time. And I do kind of, when I started playing this list and myself and started building it too, there's just so many scenarios where I being on even curve is so good in this. Like 4-drop Kuzan into 6-drop Sakazuki is great. Being able to play a blocker on turn 2, all that seems really good, right? Or even just having like passing turn 2, having impact wave, being able to go 1-for-1, all of that is really, really strong. But I just found like that meant that when I went I have to go like on odd numbers, I would just always feel like I was a turn behind and just never really got what I wanted to use with it. So I do kind of agree with the idea of having more options of things to do on like 3s and 5s, and that helps out the deck a lot too for consistency throughout the day, instead of like being very good in your even matchups and just okay in your odd matchups, and now being, I think, more across the board ready for like a full day. So I do like the ads of some of these, especially the 5 drops are really kind of what help you get a lot of that too. So anyways, this is Jonas's list. Congratulations for their finish there. And then lastly, for purple, at least we got 2 more lists, but for purple we have this Kaido list, and Kaido's been in just a really weird spot since set 2. It hasn't really gotten any tops. I do think like Impel Down is the way to play this, and it has gone some tops. I think most of the lists that have topped with Kaido do run the Impel Down package. It is still silly to me that there aren't any Animal Kingdom searchers in this game still, and I don't think we're getting any time soon, which really stinks. So but yeah, a lot of interesting decisions for this one, including like running the Fukuru Kuju, being able to run like Hell's Judgment. I think makes sense, but a lot of one-offs, those like Shiruru, Minio Koala, which doesn't get the ramp but is a blocker, Bracho Bomber, and just like a lot of interesting cards for a deck like this. But I don't know, Kaido's in a weird spot. I think it's like Smoker in a lot of ways, where it does have options for it, but I think Smoker for the same kind of game plan is a little bit better. Onigashima on curves also just like a game winner or ender, which kind of stinks, but I don't know. I think Kaido's okay. It's not my deck of choice for this meta right now, but I do think that it not too unheard of to get like a good top every once in a while, but I don't know. The consistency is still a little lacking to me on that one. But for Ryoichi for their finish, congratulations there. And we're going to go to our last deck for real this time. So this is 7th place from Core. This is Giovanni's Kinemon. And I was talking about it earlier too. And Kinemon got, I think, 16th place or top 16 for the attack event, but then also 7th place here. And Kinemon is good if you find your curve when you need to. It does kind of have like the part of the reason Kaido's good is because you're able to play things a little bit cheaper, and Kinemon is able to do that occasionally. It's just not very flexible, unfortunately. I feel like for what its plays are, you're kind of wanting to play a bunch of these also like 3s and 4s, the Yamatos and the Okikus, which are good cards, but they don't have any counter power in your hand, which means they're just stuck in your hand a lot of the time, which kind of stinks. And then also running like Captain Kid, Odin, and also 2 copies of each of these event cards just means that it's very tricky to be consistent with this deck at times. And I just really feel that a lot of the time. But when you are able to go off and you're able to control the early board and then just drop an Odin, most of the time you just win because it's just too much pressure and too much tempo in your favor that your opponent doesn't really have a good answer on the crackback for it. So I think the deck is still good. I think it's just a little bit linear and a little bit particular in finding the pieces when you need to. It can get that early game pressure against a lot of decks and sometimes just steamroll from there, but by and large it doesn't. I don't know, it's just consistency issues again too, but when it goes off it feels very, very good. So anyways, this is Giovanni's list, and that is going to be our double breakdown for us today. Thank you guys so much again for watching, and I appreciate being patient on me getting this out. I was traveling this weekend as well, but to all our top 16 players for both events, congratulations. Super cool to see all these players do well, and a lot of these decks are really interesting as well. But that's going to be it for me. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.